In this manhwa, the virus spreads throughout the world, and a quarantine is announced. And after the restrictions are lifted, the main character, who constantly plays League of Legends, returns to his college, and his childhood friend has matured, which makes him want to touch the rice buns she baked and more. Watch the video until the end to find out what they will do. The action of today's manhwa begins in an unremarkable ordinary town, in a not particularly expensive area. Moving into one of the apartments, we watch our main character actively press the keys. Apparently right now, our main character has some serious game at stake. Looking at the screen of our main character, we watch as he and his team demolish the citadel of the enemy team. But after a couple of moments, something incredible happens on the part of the opponents, and a message appears on the screen about the failure of the mission. At the moment, our main character looks like a real 19-year-old corpse who does nothing but play League of Legends. Scratching his head, the guy realizes that this is the only way to earn rating points. In fact, this guy is 23 years old and his name is Nam Tae-hyung, and he recently served in the army and is now in his second year. A moment later, we watch our main character enter another game, and looking at his character, he realizes that she is beautiful. Our main character continued to look at his in-game heroine. He realized that with just one look, he was turned on. This guy continued to look at his character. He understood that if such a woman existed, he would do anything for her. Next, this unbalanced League of Legends player begins to greedily continue to look at all the charms of this girl. A couple of moments after this guy continues to stare at the pixels on the screen, he decides that it's time to service his Bugatti. One more second, and our main character immediately decides that this is a good idea, so he immediately reaches for napkins just in case. Immediately after Nam decides that he will indeed service his Bugatti, he immediately pulls it out of the garage. Next, the guy understands that in order to prevent his fuel tank from spilling right in his room, he needs to wrap it with a napkin. Immediately after this guy finishes the self-service preparation process, he begins to test drive his car. As soon as our main character gets the hang of it, he suddenly hears some sound similar to a knock on his door. He immediately realizes that he was interrupted. Our main character is simply shocked that he is interrupted at such a crucial moment before he begins to roll his Bugatti in his hands. Next, we watch as our main character takes out the phone, which just interrupted him. He wonders why this is happening at such an inopportune time. Our main character, as if nothing had happened, picks up the phone and asks what happened. The caller replies that she was just bored and decided to kill time. Next, we see in front of us a girl with short red hair. She asks our main character why he doesn't leave the house because the virus period is over. In response to such a rather logical answer, our main character tells this girl that it is none of her business and she should not care what other people do. The girl with red hair tells our main character that she already means that he plays Fortnite all day long, because what else can you do at home alone? Immediately after this girl on the phone called our main character a slacker, he immediately said that this was not so, but in fact this was an accurate description of the guy. Our main character continued the conversation by telling this girl that if she doesn't have anything important, then he hangs up because he's very busy right now. In response to such an ultimatum from our main character, this girl replies that in this case they will meet at Object X at 6 o'clock. This girl continues saying that they will take pork belly and soju. The guy immediately replies that he doesn't want to go out anywhere, but in that case, the girl will come herself. After this girl directly told our main character that she didn't care what he said, she hung up and left him standing like an idiot. After this conversation ended, this guy immediately took hold of his head, wondering if this girl could even do everything as he asks of her. In truth, everyone, like our main character, didn't even notice that the restrictions due to the Skibidi-19 virus were finally lifted and a warm spring arrived. Life continued to go on as usual, and in the first year our main character had distance learning, so he had not yet had time to live student life. But immediately after the restrictions from the Skibidi-19 virus finally ended, our main character was taken into the army, and he only recently returned. Probably the not very healthy lifestyle of our main character is due to the fact that he still does not perceive himself as an adult and wealthy person. A couple of moments after this, we see that our main character still came to the appointed meeting. This girl with red hair immediately saw and called him to her. Our main character still wasn't in the slightest mood. He asked this girl not to shout his name all over the street because he was feeling embarrassed. If anything, this girl was a friend of our main character, with whom he had been friends since high school. She told the guy that, by the way, he was 5 minutes late. A couple of moments after these two met, we watched as they, as planned, began to go to some place where it smelled very tasty. Immediately after this couple reached the very restaurant where they agreed to meet, our main character was immediately offered a drink and he agreed. After the two finally sat down normally and poured each other alcohol, this girl offered her friend a drink to his health. The guy was skeptical. But before drinking, our main character asked his girlfriend why they do this every time. The girl's eyes sparkled. and the guy said that you need to drink soju with meat. As one could already understand, the relationship between our main character and this girl was a little one-sided, but being younger, she seemed very quiet and beautiful. But everything changed dramatically after this girl finally graduated from school. She immediately dyed her hair and seemed to become a different person. As soon as this girl drank a child's portion, she was immediately blown away and she began to climb towards our main character and drown him in her personal ocean of rice buns. It was a little more difficult for our main character with friends and girlfriends. He always communicated with them in the same way, without particularly attaching importance to the very fact of communication. Our main character was absolutely indifferent to having a conversation or friendship with a girl or a guy. Meanwhile, this girl said that she needed to go to the toilet. Immediately after this girl started leaving, our main character began to eat more actively. He also realized that he began to communicate better after he became comfortable with her. But a couple of moments after our main character, as if nothing had happened, drank another shot, he opened his one eye to look at his girlfriend. Immediately after this guy looked after this girl, his gaze became attached to the lovely scenery of this girl that was behind her. After our main character saw such charms of his girlfriend, he immediately blushed, incomprehensibly from alcohol or from embarrassment. He kept in his head that he felt comfortable. Immediately after our main character caught himself on this thought, he realized that it is obvious that it is more difficult to be friends with someone with whom he is uncomfortable, but he was more than comfortable with this waifu. While our main character continued to think philosophically about friendship with his girlfriend, his stream of thoughts was abruptly interrupted after he decided to look at his phone. After our main character picked up his iPhone 17 Extreme Edition, he saw that this girl wrote to him with a suck signal because there is no toilet paper in this toilet. Our main character was very unhappy that his girlfriend found herself in such an uncomfortable and annoying situation for the main character, but he was forced to save her. This girl immediately told our main character that she was grateful to him. Taehyung asked her what kind of girl she is who doesn't carry napkins with her. Immediately after this girl got out of a difficult situation, she immediately continued drinking. Our main character understood that she was already drinking her 5th bottle and asked her to know when to stop. In response to this girl asked our main character how much he drank. She asked him not to act like a baby just because a girl was asking him about it. The girl called her friend a little bastard and asked him if he would take her home if she got too drunk. The guy asked her why on earth he should do this. Immediately after this, our main character turned on his eagle vision in order to understand that his friend was cold or something like that, because her joystick suddenly decided to take a walk. This girl proceeded to tell our main character that this has always been a problem for him since the talk about them dating from other people started. While this girl was discussing problems that interest her, our main character, even with all his desire, could not take his eyes off this girl's joysticks, which suggested themselves. But after a moment, this girl realized that this guy was not looking into her eyes at all, at least not in those eyes. She asked him with a frown whether he was listening to her at all or not. In response to the fact that this girl so quickly exposed our main character and asked where he was looking and whether he was listening to her, Taehyung laughed, saying that of course he was listening to her. In truth, our main character was embarrassed every time this happened, even if he knows that he shouldn't. His eyes still continue to stare at the outline of this girl. Judging by the fact that we saw in front of us that time was already actively moving towards the night, and this girl continued to drink like crazy, Taehyung asked her if she was finally going to stop. Immediately after our main character was convinced that this girl could no longer move on her own, he took her on his back. But judging by his shaking legs, he skipped leg day. After our main character turned into a vehicle, he asked his passenger to hold on normally because she was starting to slip, and it was becoming difficult for him. Our main character understood that in romantic films such scenes seem much easier than they actually are. In order to increase the chances of getting home, he took up the girl's rice buns. But in fact, our main character had no idea that he had just grabbed this girl's bumper. But after a moment, he suddenly realized this and became embarrassed. In order to make sure that the hands of our main character are on the bumper of this girl, he moved his hands again, after which he was finally convinced of his version. At this time, our main character continued the route home, but he understands that if he succumbs to the desire to give this girl a ride in his personal Bugatti, then it will only end with one. With each subsequent step taken by our main character, his legs began to shake more and more because he always skipped leg day. It was also difficult for him to restrain his desires. But after a couple of moments, this guy realized that with each next step, his fingers went further and further in this race, and he realized that he was in real hell. But despite the enormous number of difficulties that our main character faced, the champion spirit and the commandment of Sigma lived in him. So he continued to move forward. But besides the fact that the legs of our protagonist's stick began to get more and more tired, the more he suffered from his thoughts that never ceased to tempt him, he tried to make himself understand that this was his girlfriend. Continuing to carry it, our main character answered to himself that this is true. Because nothing can be done when you carry a person like this, you inevitably touch him in different places, including the bumper. But our main character simply could not leave the thought that the feeling of this girl's peach in his hands was so real despite the fact that it was in her pocket. This girl, meanwhile, continued to be unconscious as if she were dead, and our main character found another problem after he realized that this girl is just damn warm and soft. But based on his code of a gentleman, our main character continued to drag this girl home. But he was faced with a new problem, because his pocket Bugatti could already explode. In truth, our main character believed that in such situations, it is simply impossible for a guy to restrain himself due to testosterone, even if his girlfriend has been nearby since childhood. Then we witnessed a great victory for our main character. Because he finally managed to bring this girl home, he asked her why she was behaving this way, because the effect of alcohol should have softened. Immediately after our main character realized that his childhood friend was behaving very strangely, he immediately carried her to bed, after which she immediately passed out, leaving this girl and rubbing his forehead from sweat because our main character that day was doing more physical activity than in the army. This girl began to piss him off very much. After this guy walked away a few steps, he turned around to look at the sleeping girl again and wonder where the hell he should go now. The code of honor of our protagonist, Gigachad, simply could not allow him to leave this defenseless drunk girl alone, so he thought about sitting next to him until she woke up. But a moment later, our main character immediately gave up on his personal code of honor. He realized that now it doesn't matter, because he fulfilled his duty by bringing her here, so he will go home. But as soon as our main character headed towards the exit in order to continue playing League of Legends, strange sounds behind him made him turn around sharply and understand what was going on. Immediately after our main character looked at his childhood friend again, he realized that she had turned over on her back on her own, and now he was simply lying in an excellent position for training. After Taehyung saw the simply incredible landscape of his childhood friend, he simply tried with all his might to take his gaze as far as possible from this girl's garage. Judging by the look of our main character at that moment, he definitely changed his mind about going somewhere after he saw such a lovely landscape above him that is better than a series of victories in the League of Legends. After a couple of moments, we watch as he nervously swallowed his saliva because he understood that now he definitely wouldn't be able to hold back, even considering that in front of him was his childhood friend. At this moment, the childhood friend of our main character continued to lie under the effect of alcohol. Judging by her facial expression, she felt very good. A moment later, we move again to our main character, who at this moment, like a lion, quietly sneaks towards his prey in order to examine it closely and possibly attack. Then we watch how, in a short period of time, our main character, who was already standing near the exit, found himself again in front of a girl who was in a very attractive pose. A couple of moments after Taehyung got close enough, he realized that this girl was wearing such tight-fitting clothes that he felt like he had X-ray vision. Then we watched as our main character's hand slowly began to rise because he thought that nothing bad would happen if he just touched the girl's garage. Then we continued to watch as our protagonist's finger began to tremble, but he continued to confidently move towards the garage in order to experience this feeling once. Our main character achieved his goal and felt the incredible softness of the garage, but after a moment he wondered what he was doing, especially since he was doing it not with a random girl, but with a friend. Immediately after our main character's finger made a discovery, and the guy was very ashamed, he ran out of this apartment like Sonic in order to get out before she woke up. But after our main character ran a few meters, his shoulders suddenly began to hurt from recent physical activity. He hoped that this would not continue in the middle of the night. Our main character also told himself that if he once again allowed himself to go out with his childhood friend, then he would definitely be finished. But suddenly, after a touch on the shoulder, he stopped. Immediately after Taehyung, but not from BTS, stopped, he sharply looked at his hands, which made him immediately remember the feeling when he touched this girl's garage with his finger. But our main character could not limit himself to just looking at his hand. This was not enough for him, so he wondered if his finger could smell after a short trip. Immediately after Taehyung, no matter how strange it was, sniffed his finger, he realized that he smelled Jaegyung, or it was the smell from his clothes. He tried to understand what kind of aroma it was. But after a couple of moments, our main character still managed to come to his senses and stop, because he immediately realized that at that moment, he looked like some guy obsessed with strange things. But this was not the only reason why our main character had to blame himself, because after he lowered his gaze to his pants, he realized that his Bugatti had already started. Taehyung was sure that he had to resist evil and just leave this place despite his dirty thoughts. He decided that he would rather come home after playing Fortnite or Genshin Impact. At the moment when our main character decides to return to his home, the course of events is abruptly interrupted, and we are transported back to this girl who at that moment is sleeping like a baby. Next, we watch as this girl slowly opens her eyes. She probably won't immediately understand where she is because just a few moments ago she was very drunk. Immediately after the strange childhood friend of our main character came to her senses, she began to get rid of the unnecessary rags that she was wearing. Apparently, she wanted to sleep without them. Then we watch as all these unnecessary rags that this girl was wearing were already on the floor. Apparently, she suddenly decided that she definitely didn't need them. Immediately after this girl completely got rid of everything unnecessary on herself, she immediately began to look at her garage in order to make a diagnosis. A moment after this girl looked at her garage and touched it a little, she realized that this bastard dared to touch her garage while she was in a dream. After this girl with red hair realized that the guy was examining her, she immediately turned her head to the side, seeing a device for small earthquakes. Immediately after this girl decided that right now was just the perfect moment to take full advantage of this miracle device. So we heard strange sounds from her. Then we watched as this girl's face blurred with very pleasant emotions, because right now she was busy self-maintaining her garage using a special device. But a few minutes after this girl was servicing her garage, she looked at herself and, just like our main character, wondered what the hell she was doing now. Looking at her hands, which continued to do their work with the help of special equipment, she asked herself a philosophical question. Did she really want everything to turn out this way? Immediately after this girl caught herself thinking that she wanted to play games with our main character, she thought that she was simply crazy because she was with him. It was funny and absurd. This girl declared with full confidence that she would not do cardio training with our main character even in the next life. But judging by her strange look, this was not entirely true. While this girl continued to convince herself that she and our main character were just friends, the course of events was interrupted, and we continue the next day in the same town. At this moment, our main character is heading to study. He simply cannot help but notice this wonderful smell. He is glad because today his student life finally begins. Continuing to walk, this guy said thanks to this damn Skibidi 2019 for depriving him of the first time of his student life, he didn't even really see the audience. But now that the 2019 Skibidi virus was defeated by humanity, our main character understood that now he would definitely be able to enjoy his life to the fullest. He understood that he felt anticipation. Looking at the educational institution where our main character will study, he understood that he would definitely live a popular life because Taehyung was already rushing towards it at all times. Apparently, the student life of our main character was not so exciting because after the course of events is interrupted, we watch as the day approaches night. After another moment, we move to the building in which, apparently, our main character is studying. Right now, he is sitting in the canteen all alone and apparently eating something. Our main character understood that everything actually turned out to be much more complicated than he imagined because he couldn't even squeeze a word out of himself. It was all a deception. Our main character continued to eat rice and understand that he was far from getting the very popular life he dreamed of. He would quickly eat and go home to play games. Then we watched as our main character, with the most dissatisfied face, continued to eat his bowl of rice. From his appearance, it was clear how dissatisfied he was with unjustified expectations. One more moment and the feast of our main character is interrupted. After that same childhood friend calls him, he wondered why she was calling him while he was eating. Then we watched as our main character finally dared to pick up the phone and ask this girl if she really had nothing else to do, and she decided to call him. Next, this girl asked our main character what he was talking about. She calls him a punk and asks him if he really thinks that she doesn't know why he's so angry. A close friend from our protagonist's childhood continued by telling our protagonist that apparently he hasn't made a single friend, and now he's probably sitting in the dining room eating alone. Immediately after this girl hears silence, she replies that she knew so she asked him to quickly go down to the school gates because she was waiting for him. This girl continued by telling our main character that she was too bored, so she decided to come get him so that they could go out together for a drink again. Our main character replies that he doesn't want to go anywhere, and he will continue to play League of Legends. The girl asks the guy if he wants her to post about him touching her garage. Immediately after our main character heard that this girl was threatening him like this, he asks her what the hell they are talking about. The girl called him an idiot because he stares too much. After this girl masterfully beat our main character, she once again asked him if he was going to the school gates. The guy had no choice, so he replied that he was on his way. Hearing this, she asked our main character to call her when he was near the appointed meeting place. Everyone looked in surprise at this girl in a strange outfit. Next, we watch how this guy who was looking at this girl turns out to know her. He calls her by name, and this girl also recognizes the guy, calling him Sunbae. Then this man with glasses with black hair told this girl with red hair that everyone around was drinking, and for some reason she was standing here alone in the middle of the school. He was surprised. In response to the fact that this man invited this girl to go drink alcohol with him, she immediately refused this man, saying that today she was not good for this kind of activity. But then this man with glasses immediately realized that this woman was simply trying to make him leave as quickly as possible. He asked her if he was serious. Was it worth walking her home? In response to this proposal, this girl smiles at this guy and immediately rejected his request, saying that a friend would pick her up. But she thanks this guy for his concern. Immediately after this girl masterfully made this guy leave her, he was forced to raise his hand and say goodbye to this girl. He asked her to take care of herself. But immediately after this beautiful woman turned around showing her charms, this man immediately realized that it was not in vain that he tried to take her away, because she had an incredible shape. Meanwhile, we watched as our main character walked to the meeting place, thinking about what he had sinned so much in his past life. Was he really destined to be under the will of this dictator? Our main character understands that if this continues, he will be just an ordinary errand boy who will remain in the shadow of his Queen Sigma mommy. A couple of moments later, our main character hears how the crowd near him begins to discuss some kind of goddess who is unimaginably beautiful. Having heard all these conversations, Taehyung simply cannot help but turn around. Interest immediately absorbed our main character, and he immediately turned around to understand what the hell this crowd of guys his age was talking about so enthusiastically. A couple of moments after our main character turns around to see who has become the target of such active discussions, he simply sees a real goddess who has descended from heaven. Immediately after our main character sees this incredible beauty in front of him, his questions immediately disappear about who all these active discussions about beauty were about. After our main character takes a closer look at this girl, he realizes that in front of him is really a goddess who has the appearance of the best Korean supermodel. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted again, and we again watch the same childhood friend of our protagonist who, judging by her stance, is already running out of patience to wait. After this equally beautiful waifu stands there for a couple more seconds, she becomes convinced that she is really running out of patience and wonders when this idiot will get there. A couple of moments after this girl complains about the slow speed of our main character, we watch as he still appears in her field of vision. But he's kind of old. Putting her hand on her hips, she immediately asks our main character where he has been for so long since she called him and told him to come. A lot of time has passed. Everything comes together after our main character answers his childhood friend that deities really exist and he is convinced of this. It is immediately clear who exactly this guy was talking about. Our main character's childhood friend immediately realized the state our main character was in. She began waving her hand in front of his face to bring him back to Earth. Meanwhile, we are transported to the place where these two will eat. This girl asks our main character who he saw there of such unprecedented beauty. But immediately after our main character says that he has no idea who this person is and who she is, his childhood friend tells him that in that case, they can look for her. A moment after this girl offers our main character a search for the girl he saw, she opens the phone and tells the guy that she has already found her. Immediately after this, she shows our main character the screen of her phone, asking him if this is the girl he is talking about. Judging by the guy's reaction, you can immediately understand that this is so. This girl has only 7.9 thousand followers on Instagram, immediately after our main character's friend sees her nickname, Goddess XX. She understands that this is a complete cringe, and not a nickname. In response to such an objection, our main character responds to his friend that even despite her nickname, this does not change anything, and the goddess remains the same beautiful goddess. Having heard this girl's defense from Taehyung, this girl asks him whether it's decent to be so perfect, but to be honest, she looks like a fool, and his goddess doesn't look much better than her. Immediately after our main character hears that his childhood friend compares herself to this goddess in beauty, our main character immediately answers her that that's not the case at all. The girl asks the guy what he means, to which she receives the answer that according to his feelings, this is a feeling of love. This phrase forces him to empty his mouth from the drink. Taehyung continues by saying that it was the first time he felt this feeling in a long time. After he saw her, he decided that it was destined for him to do cardio training with her.